Have you ever thought you knew someone so well, only to discover that they were hiding a dark, twisted secret right under your nose? Imagine waking up every day next to the person you love, the person you've promised to spend your life with, only to realize that they've been plotting against you in the most unimaginable way. My name is Heather, and at 23 years old, I thought I had it all: a loving husband, a bright future, and a beautiful life ahead of me. But what I didn't know was that my perfect world was about to shatter, all because of a single conversation I wasn't supposed to understand. It all started innocently enough: a Sunday afternoon, tea with my husband and his mother, the kind of day that should have been filled with laughter and love. Frederick, my husband, was French, and his mother, Ale, often invited us over for these lovely little gatherings. I remember the sunlight streaming through the windows, the scent of freshly baked croissants mingling with the rich aroma of the tea. It was the kind of day that made you believe in the goodness of life, in the strength of family, in the power of love. But as they chatted away in French, a language I had secretly been learning for months, I began to understand the words that were never meant for my ears. And what I heard? It wasn't just a harmless conversation. It was a cold, calculated plot, a plan that would not only destroy my marriage but rip apart the very foundation of trust one had built my life upon. I had started learning French as a surprise for Frederick, a way to connect more deeply with him and his family. We had a good life together, or at least I thought we did. Despite the language barrier, our relationship was smooth sailing. We communicated well enough in English, but I wanted to do more. I wanted to understand the little nuances, the jokes, the cultural references that were lost in translation. I wanted to show him how much I cared, how deeply I was committed to making our life together perfect. So I kept my lessons a secret, planning to reveal my new skills at just the right moment. I imagined the look of surprise and pride on his face, the joy in his eyes when he realized how much effort I had put in for him. But that day, as we sat in his mother's cozy living room, everything changed. It was the first time I had understood more than just a few words here and there. The conversation started out innocently enough, with Ale asking Frederick if he had brought the croissants. They laughed and joked about the pastries, but then, suddenly, the tone shifted. "Je support pas cuisine," Ale said, her voice dripping with disdain. I felt a pang in my chest as I realized what she had said. I can't stand her cooking. She was talking about me. All those times I had tried to impress her with my attempts at French cuisine, all the effort I had put into making sure everything was just right. She hated it. And Frederick, my beloved husband, the man who had promised to love and cherish me, didn't defend me. He didn't say a word to contradict her. Instead, he nodded in agreement, his face serious. I felt the blood drain from my face, my heart pounding in my ears. How could they speak about me like this? How could Frederick, the man I loved, just sit there and agree with her? But it didn't stop there. Ale continued, her voice lowering to a conspiratorial whisper. "Il est crucial que personne ne sache pour cette maison," she said. "Si quelqu'un d'autre le découvre, nous pourrions tout perdre." My mind raced as I tried to keep up with the conversation. She was talking about a house, something important, something they were keeping from me. And then Frederick spoke, his voice calm and reassuring, but with a coldness that I had never heard before. "Ne t'inquiète pas, maman. Je m'en occupe. Heather any doit rien savoir." Heather must not know. Those words echoed in my mind like a sinister refrain. They were hiding something from me, something big. A house, an inheritance, something that was so important they were willing to lie to me, to deceive me. My world started to crumble around me. The man I had trusted with my life, the woman I had tried so hard to please, they were conspiring against me. I couldn't react, couldn't show that I understood. Not yet. I needed to know more. I needed to gather as much information as I could before I confronted them. So I sat there, forcing a smile, pretending that everything was fine while my heart shattered into a million pieces. Inside, I was screaming. How could this be happening? What had I done to deserve this? As the day went on, I tried to act normal, but it was like walking through a nightmare. Every word they spoke, every glance they exchanged, felt like another knife in my back. I was desperate to know what they were planning, but I couldn't let them see that I was onto them. I had to be careful, had to play my cards right. That night, as Frederick slept beside me, I lay awake, my mind racing. What was I supposed to do? How could I confront them without proof? I needed evidence, something concrete that would show exactly what they were planning. But how was I going to get it? I couldn't just come out and ask them. I had to be smarter than that. I had to outwit them at their own game. The next morning, I began my mission. I paid closer attention to everything they said, every text message Frederick received, every phone call he made. I knew I was playing a dangerous game, but I didn't care. I had to find out the truth, no matter what it took. It wasn't long before I got my first piece of the puzzle. Frederick left his phone on the kitchen counter while he went to take a shower. My heart raced as I picked it up, my hands trembling. I knew it was wrong to invade his privacy, but I had no choice. I quickly scrolled through his messages, my eyes widening as I read the conversation between him and Ale. They were discussing a trip, something that was happening soon, and it involved Great Uncle Pierre's house. My blood ran cold. This was it. This was what they were hiding from me. They were planning to go to France to claim the house, an inheritance they didn't want me to know about. But why? Was it because they didn't want to share it with me? Or was there something more sinister at play? I couldn't confront them yet. I needed more evidence, something solid that I could use against them if necessary. So I did the only thing I could think of. I took Frederick's phone and sent the details of the trip to myself. Then I quickly deleted the message from his phone, making sure there was no trace of what I had done. Over the next few days, I continued to gather information, all while pretending that everything was normal. It was exhausting, the constant charade of pretending not to know, of acting like everything was fine when in reality, my world was falling apart. But I knew it was necessary. I had to play the long game if I wanted to come out of this unscathed. As their departure day grew closer, my anxiety grew. I knew I had to act soon or risk losing everything. I decided to make a bold move. That night, as Frederick slept, I slipped out of bed and made my way to his office. His computer was on the desk, the screen still glowing faintly. I sat down and began to search for anything that might help me. It didn't take long to find what I was looking for: flight details, hotel reservations, everything I needed to know about their trip. I quickly copied the information and then did something that I knew would change everything. I altered their flight details. It was a small change, just a day later, but it would be enough to throw off their entire plan. They wouldn't know until it was too late, and by then, I would be ready. I felt a thrill of satisfaction as I closed the computer, a sense of power that I hadn't felt in days. I was in control now. The next morning, chaos erupted. Frederick and Ale were frantic, rushing around the house as they realized that their flight had been changed. I watched from the sidelines, pretending to be concerned, but secretly reveling in their confusion. They had no idea what had happened, no idea that I was the one who had orchestrated the entire thing. Frederick tried to call the airline, but it was too late. The flight was full, and they wouldn't be able to leave until the next day. Ale was furious, blaming Frederick for the mix-up, while Frederick tried to calm her down. I could barely contain my smile as I watched them unravel. This was only the beginning. As they argued, I slipped away to the bedroom and called Great Uncle Pierre. It was a risky move, but I needed to know where he stood. I needed to know if he was in on their plan or if he was just as much in the dark as I had been. "Hello, Uncle Pierre," I said, my voice trembling slightly. "It's Heather." "Hello, my dear," he replied, his voice warm and kind. "How are you? Is everything all right?" "Not exactly," I said, taking a deep breath. "I need to talk to you about something important. It's about Frederick and Ale." There was a pause on the other end of the line, and I could hear the concern in his voice when he finally spoke. "What about them?" I hesitated, wondering how much I should reveal. But then I remembered the cruelty in their voices, the way they had spoken about me as if I were nothing. I couldn't hold back any longer. "I overheard them talking about the house," I said, my voice shaking. "They're planning to claim it for themselves, and they didn't want me to know. They were going to leave today to meet with you, but I changed their flight. I needed to warn you." There was another long silence, and I wondered if I had made a mistake. But then Uncle Pierre sighed, and when he spoke again, his voice was filled with sadness. "I had no idea," he said softly. "I trusted them, Heather. I trusted them to do the right thing, and now it seems they were planning to betray me. Thank you for telling me." Relief washed over me, and I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. "What are you going to do?" I asked. "I'm going to put an end to this," he said firmly. "They won't get the house, not after what they've done. You've shown me who they really are, Heather, and I won't reward them for their greed and deceit." Tears welled up in my eyes as I listened to his words. It felt like justice was finally being served, that all the pain and betrayal I had endured was leading to something good. But there was still more to do. I couldn't let them get away with this so easily. "Thank you, Uncle Pierre," I said, my voice choked with emotion. "But there's something else I need to do." "What is it?" he asked gently. "I'm going to leave Frederick," I said, the decision solidifying in my mind as I spoke the words. "I can't stay with him after this. I can't be with someone who would betray me like this." There was a pause, and then Uncle Pierre spoke again, his voice filled with compassion. "I understand, Heather. You have to do what's best for you. If you need anything at all, you just let me know." "Thank you," I whispered, feeling a sense of gratitude that I couldn't put into words. "Thank you for everything." We ended the call, and I sat there for a moment, letting the reality of what I had just done sink in. I was leaving Frederick. I was walking away from the life I had built, from the man I had once loved. It was terrifying, but it was also liberating. I was taking control of my life, refusing to be a victim any longer. That afternoon, I packed my bags while Frederick and Ale were still trying to figure out what had happened with their flight. I didn't say anything to them, didn't give them any warning. I just left a note on the kitchen counter, explaining that I knew everything, that I was leaving, and that I would never forgive them for what they had done. As I drove away, I felt a mixture of emotions: anger, sadness, relief. I didn't know what the future held, but I knew that I had made the right decision. I couldn't stay with someone who didn't truly care about me, who was willing to lie and deceive to get what they wanted. Over the next few weeks, I started the process of rebuilding my life. It wasn't easy. There were moments when I doubted myself, when I wondered if I had made a mistake. But every time those thoughts crept in, I remembered the way Frederick and Ale had spoken about me, the way they had planned to betray me without a second thought. And I knew that I had made the right choice. As for Frederick and Ale, they didn't take the news well. They tried to contact me, to convince me to come back, but I ignored their calls. I knew that I could never trust them again, that any attempt to reconcile would only end in more pain. So I moved on, slowly but surely, and began to build a new life for myself. In the end, Great Uncle Pierre kept his promise. He didn't give the house to Frederick and Ale. Instead, he gave it to me, a gesture of kindness and gratitude that I would never forget. It was a beautiful mansion, more than I could have ever imagined, and it became a symbol of my newfound strength and independence. I moved into the house, far away from the life I had left behind, and started over. It wasn't easy. There were days when the loneliness was overwhelming, when the memories of what had happened threatened to consume me. But I pushed through, determined to create a life that was mine, free from the lies and deceit that had once defined my world. And as time passed, I found peace. I discovered a strength within myself that I never knew I had, a resilience that carried me through the darkest of days. I learned to trust again, to open my heart to new possibilities, and to believe that there was still good in the world, even after everything that had happened. In the end, I realized that the betrayal of Frederick and Ale had been a blessing in disguise. It had forced me to confront the truth, to take control of my life, and to find the courage to walk away from a situation that was toxic and damaging. And in doing so, I had found myself again. So here I am, living in a beautiful mansion, free from the shadows of the past. It's not the life I had planned, but it's a life that I've chosen, a life that I've built with my own two hands. And for that, I am eternally grateful. This